Welcome to Mixed Media Friday. Today I've decided to make another art journal page, and I am using my Delusions art journal, which I love. And I am going to take some Ideology Tim Holtz paper stuff. This is the Craft Resist paper. Love, love, love it. And these are just some extra pieces that I had left over from a previous project. And this is some golden gel medium, and it's matte golden gel medium, but you can use any, like you can use Mod Podge, you can use any sort of adhesive to put your paper down, as long as it's good enough to be able to take some wet mediums once you apply the wet mediums on. I personally just really love golden because it's what I use it on canvases a lot. So I'm just applying those pieces, and I did pre-cut them to fit the page, the art journal already, so they are already pre-cut, and I'm just applying a little bit more of the gel medium on there, and then I will be cutting that piece. That one piece off is a little bit long. Here I'm taking some Tim Holtz tissue tape, and I'm just applying it on the edges there, just to give it a little bit of different texture and dimension. I just really love that. Taking some Broken China Distress paints. As you guys know, I'm in love with these distress paints, and Broken China is my favorite color. I'm pretty much almost out. And in all different, as you can see, I'm kind of using these brush strokes. I'm going up and down and then side to side. And I'm not doing X's, I'm not doing W's. I'm literally just going up and down and then side to side. And I'm doing that all across my page and kind of throughout the art journal. And I'm not necessarily covering the entire thing because I'm going to be using several different colors, so I don't want to do that, but I do want to cover a good portion of it. So that's what I'm doing right now, and the reason I'm doing the up and down and side to side motion is because it gives it a really, really good look, distress look. Now this is some Mowed Lawn Distress Paint, and right here I'm applying it just as is. And then I'm grabbing a little bit of the Picket Fence, which is the white, and kind of mixing the colors a little bit together. I find the green was just a little bit too dark for me, too bright. And so I'm toning it down with a little bit of the Picket Fence. And I really, really like that. And one of the things that I love about this paper is that, I'm not sure the camera captures it, but this paper has a resist on it. And it's so, so beautiful. When you see it in person, it just kind of shines a little bit. And I love these paints because they have that kind of that transparency look, and so it's really, really cool versus when you use a straight acrylic paint, then you find that it'll cover your entire page. So I really love that I can still see the background images. I'm just applying a little bit more of the picket fence so that it can tone down a little bit of that green and a little bit of that blue. And once again, I'm doing that same up and down and then side to side motion with my paintbrush. And then applying a little bit of the Broken China again. Next, I'm taking some Wild Honey Distress Paint. And next, I'm going to be actually using my finger, because sometimes I find that my finger just gives my pieces a little bit of a different look. I have a little bit more control than with a brush, and sometimes I just really like that. So that's what I'm using right here. For those of you that don't like to get your hand dirty, you can certainly use the same technique that I used earlier. I just really love the way it looks when I use my fingers. So that's what I'm doing right here. And then I'm going to take some of the tarnished brass just to give it a little bit of an edging. And it's really, really, really pretty. It has this wonderful shine to it, and it just kind of blends the whole thing together, and it kind of gives it a little bit more of a vintage look, if you will. And then I'm kind of mixing it a little bit with the Broken China, because I find that as soon as I put the brass, it kind of lost a little bit of the blue. This is some Liquitex gesso, and just a very generic circle stencil that you can get at any art supply store or drafting store or things like that. So that's what I'm using right here. And I'm just creating circles throughout my page. I'm really not trying to be perfect. I have no desire for them to be perfect, and I don't even mind those little circles that got formed because my stencil was dirty. I'm totally okay with that. It's an art journal, and the messier sometimes, the better. So I'm not really concerned about that. And you can kind of see right now, if you look in the middle of the page, you can actually see some of the resist popping through as it's starting to dry out, which is really, really pretty. So I'm just finishing that up with the gesso. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take another distress paint. I'm going to be taking the barn door, and I'm going to apply that right in the on top of the gesso. And the reason I did that was because if you apply gesso and then paint over top, you'll kind of get the true color, versus if I had applied my red paint on top of the already blue and green, it would have been a completely different color. So this way it kind of gives you a true color, which is why I did it this way. And I'm just right now, I'm just kind of using the stencil to help me guide without kind of going outside of the lines. Not that I care too much. As you see, I did it freehand a little bit later in the video. Here I go. I did a little bit freehand because it doesn't really matter anyway. I'm going to be shading all of the edges anyhow, so it's really not going to make a difference in the end. And then now I'm just adding a little bit of that white, and all the white gesso does is it creates a little bit of shading. And I'm not trying to be too perfect, but just gives a little bit of a shading effect. Next, I'm grabbing some white gelato. And what I'm going to do with the gelato is I'm literally going to go all around the edges and then rubbing my finger around it to kind of give it like a halo effect, if you will. So I'm just going to put on some music and I'll be right back with the next step. Here I'm just going around the edges of my circles with a little bit of pan pastel, and this is just the black, and kind of the same sort of shading as I did with the white, but just on the one side to give it a little bit more of a shadow effect, if you will. Now I'm going to be taking, this is one of the sheets from the paper pad that I had used earlier, and I'm just going to be cutting out that bird. I didn't want to do it on camera, I didn't want to bore you to death, but again I'm applying some gel medium to the back of it, and I just love this paper because it's so thick, so it can really withstand a lot of abuse, which is really, really awesome. So I'm just applying that down, and what I don't know if you can see, but it also has that craft resist, which is really cool. And what I'm going to be doing next is applying some paint with some of the distress paints, the same ones I had used earlier. And I'm actually using, the brush is a little bit wet, which is perfect because it allows me to blend the colors with my fingers, versus if it was a little bit dry, it would just kind of go right into the paper. It wouldn't allow me to blend it too much. So I did wet my brush quite a bit, and it almost acted like a watercolor effect, which I really, really love. And you know, that bird takes on the color so beautifully, as you can see. So, and I'm just using a flat brush, but you could probably use a watercolor brush and it would work just fine. Just applying a little bit of the white gesso for some shading. A little bit of the orange on the beak. Just a little bit on the wings. And then I'm going to dry it and take the white gelato that I had used previously on the circles, and I'm going to do the same thing because I find that if I don't do that, my bird is kind of going to just be bleh. And so I wanted it to stand out a little bit, almost like be popping out of the page a little bit. So I'm just going around the edges with the gelato, and I can go ahead with the gelato and just blend with my fingers. I don't need to put any water. And then I just kind of wanted an effect of the bird sort of kind of flying in the air a little bit. So what you see me doing there is almost creating like a flying, like a flapping of the wing effect by using the pan pastel, the black pan pastel. It's almost like the bird is actively flying. Next, I'm going to be taking a journaling pen, and I'm literally kind of doodling some lines on my page. And what these lines are for is I'm going to be writing my message there. And so I'm kind of testing it out. And I'm using a thin one just because I find it's easier to write. And then later you can go ahead and do it with a little bit of a darker or a thicker pen if you'd like. And I'm writing fly like a bird. I had just finished listening to Nelly Furtado's song, and it just inspired me to create this page. So sometimes that's how I get my inspiration. And I know you guys ask me all the time, where do you get your inspiration? Well, sometimes it could be even a song, not even anything visual. So that's kind of how I came up with this page. And now I'm just going to be doing a little bit of doodling, and I'm going to put in fast forward and just watch you, allow you to watch the process.